ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world. This is a conversation we have been rooting for, looking forward to, and is finally here. He is an inspirational leader, a man of the moment, a true independent, and finally joining us on Independent Americans, the great and powerful Mayor Yemi Mobolade is here on Independent Americans. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this show.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. I said to you when we were warming up, this is a lot of independent, unaffiliated people who've been tracking you, who've been rooting for you. You are among friends here in this community, especially. But I want to wish you congratulations from the world of the independents, and ask you, how's it feel? You know, you were sworn in on January 6th, which was D-Day, which I think is kind of maybe D-Day for the partisan system as we know it. Your victory has sent shockwaves across the political system, but how's it feel?
Yeah, since June 6th, it's felt great. It's an interesting season of it's still the honeymoon season, and we have a lot of work to do. And like I said at my speech during the swearing in, it's time to get to work. And while we get to work, these opportunities with my media partners is a wonderful opportunity for me to pause also to reflect on not only what I've accomplished, but what we've accomplished as a city, but also many of us who call ourselves independent. And it's good to celebrate that. So this hybrid of there's work to be done, and let's enjoy this season too as well of what we've accomplished.
Well, independents have been kind of starving for a win. So it's great to have one, and folks have already rallied behind you throughout the country. I want to get into your story, your vision for Colorado Springs, your assessment really of the national landscape and maybe how you see the world. But I want to ground us in a question I ask of all of our guests. Where are you and how are you?
Where am I? That's a great question. I am currently at work at the city administration building. If you want to know exactly where I'm at, I'm in the communications office and wing, and there's a great team of colleagues here that are helping to tell the story to our residents. And so that's where I'm at. I inherited an incredible team of 3,000 public servants, from folks who are helping to care for our infrastructure to women and men keeping our community safe and caring for our parks. And it's a great team, and I'm so proud to help lead them in this new chapter.
Well, it's an exciting chapter, and you've got almost 500,000 people in the city of Colorado Springs, one of the 40th most populous city in the country. Our community especially knows it. The military and veterans community knows it. As the home of the Air Force Academy, you've got lots of veterans and I think independent-minded folks out there that were waiting to be tapped, right? To be given a leader that feels like an option. But it's been a stronghold of Republican leadership for a long period of time. You come in with this new vision and new attitude, a new approach, just on a very basic level, Mr. Mayor. How'd you do it? How did you do what independents haven't really been able to do very often in America in the last generation?
That's a great question. And first of all, I just want to give a shout out to all the many veterans that are watching and listening. Thank you for your service. We are a military community, 5 military installations in my city, and Air Force, Army, and Space Force. And we're really proud of they do to ensure our freedoms and help keep us safe. So that feels very appropriate to mention. How did I do it? I believe that leadership matters. I believe that America, and certainly my city, is tired of the partisan Washington, D.C. style politics. And what's happening in Colorado Springs is this microcosm of what most of our nation is feeling. And so I put ahead of us that transcends partisan lines. I ran a clean campaign. Believe me, there was a, whether you believe it or not, there was a hunger and a huge appetite for that. The number of people that thanked me for running a clean campaign. And I called us to something bigger than all of us, something that we can unite around. And that's one of the values of being an independent, is that we're not beholden to any party. We're beholden to values. We're beholden to the people that we're serving. That's what I put in front of people. And I remember in the campaign trail, there was a significant shift when people started calling me the people's mayor, the people's candidate. And so my campaign connected with people, with real people, not just partisan talking points.
Yep, I think that is what I think resonated throughout the country and is resonating throughout the political world too. I mean, you're young, you've got small kids, you don't come from a traditional political background, you haven't been working in state government or somewhere else, you come from, you know, the church, and you're bringing this message that I think is really transcending this moment. But you also had a nonpartisan primary, right? Which I think is also structurally really important, because we've talked a lot on this show about leadership and also the need for structural reform. So can you talk about how your candidacy, your strategy, and your victory was shaped by the fact that you've got nonpartisan primaries in the city of Colorado Springs?
It was beautiful. It was at the very onset of this journey. I remember telling my team and saying that I fully intend to run in the spirit of our own campaign laws. So in 1979, our city charter was amended for our city elections to be nonpartisan. And that was the year I was born. So I wasn't here when that was, the voters made that decision, but in the way my own interpretation of what happened in 1979 is that our residents believed that our quality of life should not be a partisan issue. That city flourishing should not be a partisan issue. And so I'm really proud of my city for that shift and that move. But Paul, the reality is we have not honored, we have not honored what the city charter demands of our leadership as candidates as well as mayors. So we've gone through the motions. We all submit that sworn affidavit to the city clerk that we've not been endorsed by any political party. And guess what we do after that? We go back to our camps. So I said from day one, I want to run on the spirit of our own local constitution and show that this can be done, and this is a hunger and appetite of our residents. So I'm really proud that we're able to do it.
I think that pride is something that people haven't associated with politics in a while, but there's a real feeling of pride around, you know, it's important how you conducted yourself during the campaign. I think this idea of integrity, of not just, you know, nonpartisanship, but maybe post-partisanship, a new generation of leaders who look at politics differently. We talk a lot about on this show about how close to half the country is independent and unaffiliated, but high numbers of young people, 60% of people, young people, 50% of veterans, a lot of other populations. Can you talk about running an independent campaign, what the voters looked like and what they sounded like, who they were? I read a lot about how there were people crossing lines, people who hadn't voted before, but I think good political campaigns are really movements. And it looked to me like a movement that involved a lot of people who hadn't been involved in this kind of movement before. Is that your take too?
No, that's well said. Early in the campaign, and really throughout the campaign life cycle, the number of people that would often tell me that I have never been involved in campaign or in politics. This is my first time. I had business leaders who always swore that they would keep politics out of their business, or people that just hated politics and would always say, this is the first time I'm getting involved. I'm breaking my own rule. In fact, I remember a business guy that hosted a meet and greet for me, told the people in attendance, you know, traditionally I stay away and I just can't, it'll almost be a sin for me not to get involved in this movement. And so my campaign has activated a lot of first timers, newcomers like me, people who would say, I've never had a yard sign, you're my first. And then I'll often remind them that I'm my own first too. So we're all doing this, we're all in it together. From a data point, 48% of the residents in my city are unaffiliated. We are independent. So we reflect that national statistics as well. I often say we are actually the largest political party in the city. And so I got to represent this group of people. You and I joked before the show started that it's complicated. It really is complicated. And these two-party camp system, it's very complicated. So when you look at my story, I like to think of myself as a product of the American dream, being able to come to this country 27 years ago. I have opportunity to go to school, land a great job, find family, find community, be an entrepreneur, be a pastor. When you look at the different aspects of my profile, it's really hard to just say, this is who Yemi is. But I connect to the many values that makes our country so great. And ultimately, I ran on who I am and who I've always been. And that part of that story is just being an independent thinker, being objective, being pragmatic, and putting our city ahead of all the chaos that we're experiencing today.
Yeah, and I think it's important, the example you're setting for our children at a time when it's hard to find examples in politics that our kids can look up to. You're an example of nice guys not finishing last. You're a respectful, thoughtful person. You're conscious about your community. You're conscious about your family. You're conscious about your role in history. So let me just ask you to pull back and look at the broader landscape in the country where we've got, this clash shaping up between likely Biden and Trump, and whoever it is, it's going to be pretty deeply partisan. We've covered No Labels. We've covered the Forward Party. We've covered other independent efforts. Can you talk about how you view the landscape nationally for independence? We need a constitutional amendment so you can one day run for president because you were born in Nigeria, right? So I think we've got to work on that, as we talked about before with Schwarzenegger and others. But can you talk about the national landscape and what you see there, and how do you see yourself fitting when you've got folks really divided in camps around Biden and Trump, or blue and red? If they're just now, finding out about you and your candidacy, can you talk about your view of the country more broadly and where we are?
Right, Paul, I've always desired and hoped that what's happening in Colorado Springs served as an inspiration for the rest of the country. This immigrant who's had the blessing of being an American citizen, and we are a nation of immigrants, and I get to remind us what's best of the best of us as Americans. I think that's part of my role, is to have this outside perspective looking in and to take us back to who we've always been. I am inspired by leaders such as Abraham Lincoln, of whom I share a birthday with. Abraham Lincoln, though he was a Republican, led as an independent, led as a moderate. I've read just about everything I can get my hands on Abraham Lincoln's leadership, because I find a lot of my leadership design and style in his ability to unify the Union at a point where there was no hope. I think we're back there today, because it truly, as a country or nation, a house divided against itself will not stand. So we need new type of leadership. Desperate times don't always call for desperate measures. Desperate times call for new and a different kind of leadership. And that is the hunger that you're feeling. I contend you're going to see a lot more Yemis around the country. And I've spoken to a number of them who are now coming out of the woodwork going, if you can do it, I can do it. There's hope. I've spoken to lots of families who had given up on politics, and people who are saying for the first time in a long time, they have hope. I'll tell you what the president said to me. I got to meet him briefly. He came to the Air Force Academy. He was a commencement speaker. And I had a brief 5-minute interaction with him. And he had mentioned that even the White House was following my campaign towards the tail end of it, and mentioned that what we're doing is really special, not just for Colorado Springs, but for the rest of the nation. And people need to take a look at what we're doing here locally. So that was really encouraging. The more we go down the path we are going, I think the greater the hunger is. That's why you're probably hearing a lot of conversations around a third party. You're probably following some of those. There's a lot of buzz around a third party, a fourth party.
Or no party, right? That's what I've often said to people. They're not necessarily forward party people or reform party people. They're just no party at all, right? They're free agents that want to look for a leader. And I think the hope that you bring is really important, but you're also practical and pragmatic, and you're going to get things done. I can tell already. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, your positivity and your unity and your example is in direct contrast to many folks in Washington and around the country. And I would argue it's in direct contrast to one of the leaders in a state that's trying to compete with you for a pretty significant government move, right? Space Command is right now being determined. It's either going to stay in Colorado Springs or it's going to go to Alabama. And we've covered on this show, Senator Tuberville, who I think has been really caustic and wants to jam up the works, and I think has been very counterproductive and said some pretty radical things. I've called him Senator Redneck because it sounds like at times he wants to build the Army of the Confederacy more than the Army of 2023. But, what's your pitch? I've been to both places. I love both places. I love Alabama and I love Colorado. But what's your point to the country and to decision makers on why Space Command should stay in Colorado?
You mean you love Colorado better? That's what you meant to say. I just wanted to edit that statement. But yeah, I do like our Alabama friends as well. When I was the VP at the Chamber and Economic Development Corporation, I actually spent time in Alabama visiting some of their a few cities there. And
you know what? That's a real thing. Like right now, do I want to live in a state with Tommy Tuberville who's want to live? No. Do I want to live in your state where you are? Yes. Yes, I mean, that's a real thing. I mean, I'll say it. I love them both, yeah. But if it's a choice between a place where, people's rights are being restricted and there's a pretty nasty guy in charge versus you coming in like Captain Positivity, man. Like, I want to raise kids in a place like
Captain Positivity. I love it. No, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. I mentioned earlier that we have 5 military installations. We are the home of space. The state of Colorado, over half of all space operations happens in this state. Most of it is in my city. I mean, in terms of even the GPS control and operations, they all happens in this city. We're already set up. Our city is designed. Our economy is designed for space, and so Space Command is here, and I believe it's here to stay. And we are already acting and behaving as though it's there. We're expanding. We're making decisions around space. So while a decision has not been made, we anticipate one will be made soon. And you call me Captain Positivity. Yeah, I am positive and hopeful that Space Command will stay in Colorado Springs.
Well, you're also, whether you want to be or not, you're going to be kind of president of the independents by default. I mean, we've covered on this show, especially a lot of the races. We said if Evan McMullin won in Utah, he'd be, a key figure in what I call the independent movement. Now you're in a position where you are, one of, if not the most high-profile independent in office, and not just a Democrat or Republican that recently changed jerseys, but someone who's been independent, maybe authentically from the start. Right. Which I think is this next generation of folks that, weren't just one fan and they changed. They kind of grew up as these fans. So as this movement is unfolding, you've got groups like No Labels that are talking about a unity ticket of a Democrat or Republican, but they're not talking about independence. Would you be open to being on a third party ticket for president now or in the future?
You mean supporting one?
No, being on one. If No Labels called you up right now and said, "Hey, we'd like you to be on the ticket for president."
Oh, well, I could have run for president though. I could.
Could you run for vice president? I guess you could. Could you run for vice president? And then you would.
That's a good point.
What's the technicality there?
Let's start with mayor. Let's start with mayor. I know I already have people saying governor next. I'm like, it's humbling and it's honoring. And what I hear, and really, and what you're also saying is, Yemi, you have the leadership that our country needs. So
That's right.
trust me, it's humbling, and I receive that well. I received a book during the campaign. I'm drawing a blank on the author. You probably have heard of it. It's called Declaration of the Independence.
Oh yeah.
It was written by a candidate who is also an independent, and that's been first of all, I thought the title is very clever.
Yep.
Declaration of Independence. The book speaks to the hunger of what you and I and most of America is feeling. So from a very practical, how can I assist this effort, even if it's not me? I am here for other independent candidates and unaffiliated candidates who are trying to make sense of this complication of what it means to run as an independent and to be proud. And like you said too, for me, I've always been that. I haven't shifted party and trying to figure out just the best way to win. If there's anything, I've shown that you can win a campaign by being authentically you. I started with a 5% name ID. By April 4th, the general election, I was at 90%. You can run and you can win as who you are authentically. And even despite when so many people said, yeah, I'm not sure it's possible. There's no way. But I'm here to say that there is a way. Be you, be authentically you. And America is hungry for what you have to bring to the table.
I love that, Mr. Mayor. I think that's what a lot of folks are missing when they try to understand this independent movement. A lot of it is about authenticity. And a lot of it is about, true independence, people who, don't take orders from above, who maybe want to bust up the two-party duopoly, but also just looking for leaders who are leaders of integrity and leaders of inspiration and leaders of, also who can get things done. And I'm going to be watching, and everyone's going to be watching and rooting for you to get things done there. I've asked you to stick around for a couple of questions for our Patreon members, and you've generously agreed to do that. But let me ask you, if you had a message to the two people running for president, like let's assume for the sake of discussion, it's Trump and it's Biden. They're going to be fighting over your base, right? That 49% is going to be the group that determines where Pennsylvania and other key swing states go. It's going to be that small number of people that whether there's a third party candidate or not, will be the most influential people in the next election in determining our commander in chief and largely most elected offices. But if you were going to advise both parties and leaders on how to connect with independents, Mayor, what would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I would let them know that my city we're independent thinkers. I know the national narrative, there's been a lot of stories around, Yemi has broken the Republican stronghold. And so while we have Democrats and Republicans in Colorado Springs, the reality is Colorado Springs is actually, we're independent thinkers. When you look at the county and you look at the swing between how the county voted in the 2016 presidential elections and then how the county voted in the 2020 presidential election, you can see that we had one of the largest swings in the country in terms of those that initially have voted for President Trump and then didn't vote for President Trump, but it's the same people. It's the same people. So you cannot box us into saying, this is the way you vote. Many of us in this community, we just want to get it right. As an unaffiliated, I vote very differently in different election cycles. And really what we're voting for is we're voting for our families. We're voting for the safety of our families and our neighborhood. We're voting for economic vitality. These are the issues that we're saying yes to. I'll tell you what we're also saying no to. We're saying no to just trying to box us into one or two issues. We're not one-dimensional voters. We're not two issue voters. It's complicated. And so I would encourage both candidates to ensure that they're speaking to our hearts and mind and speaking to the issues around our desire for safety, our desire for a strong economy, our desire to see more jobs created, and quality of life is what we vote for. So while you are trying to capitalize on those partisan talking points, if you don't speak to the true issues that we care about, you may be losing us. So know that you're speaking to a community that we vote very thoughtfully and intelligently, and it's hard many times to box us in. And even my campaign is an example of that, when people were surprised that I had a lot of support from conservatives. I mean, I had one of the biggest conservative leaders in our community, the former sheriff of our county, El Paso County, is voted for me and supported me and is a friend of mine. And so you can see how Colorado Springs, how the politics look like. And so I would encourage the candidates to ensure that you are speaking to our hearts ultimately, and not just speaking to partisan talking points.
Mayor Mobolade, they're going to be fighting over your endorsement too. I wore my independent shirt as a
I need one of those.
But I'll get you one. I'll get you one. But I think they're going to, Colorado's going to be critical. They're going to be fighting over your endorsement. And maybe just a final question for you, sir. The message that children see is so important right now. And we had my friend Wes Moore on the show a number of times, who I think is a great example, no matter what party you stand for. I think he's a great example of a leader and for our children. And you, I think, also are a really inspiring leader coming out of politics that our kids can look up to. So a straight up question, like, my kids are probably going to watch this. A lot of kids are going to watch this, I hope. What's your message to the young people in this country right now who maybe feel a little bit concerned? They feel, disrupted, right? And maybe feel like there aren't too many leaders out there that they can look up to. What's your message to the young people of this country, sir?
That's a great question, and one that touches my heart. I'll tell you the answer that I've always given every young person that I see. And one is that there's hope, and that two is we're passing the baton to you. Do better than us. I'm sorry we failed you. We're trying, but you have an opportunity to reunite us and to make America just a great country again. So it's a message of empowerment. It's a message of encouragement. I am really proud to see so many families that were activated in this last election cycle. There's so many kids that partly because I'm a parent of young kids, so many I'm relatable. Many families see themselves in me. The number of pictures that I've taken with a lot of young kids, the number of young people who their parents bring and said they want to meet you, they want to take a picture with you. I know I stir up something even in the young generation. My swearing in, I was so glad to have my son's third grade class there to get the pledge of allegiance. It was such a sweet experience. And third grade is all about civic learning and education. Yep. And so it all came full circle for many families. So I know they're paying attention. And it's one of the reasons I'm proud to be in this office, is to also activate families as well. So there is hope. There is hope. And I hope they do actually better than we did.
Well, we say on the show a lot, hope is the oxygen of democracy. And you're like a hurricane of hope. It's just coming out and it's inspiring other people. And I just want to thank you for your leadership. Leadership is about sacrifice, and you put yourself out there, you put your family out there. It was hard. And it's especially hard when you go as an independent, because you don't have a group of people that automatically click in behind you. It's the road less traveled. That's definitely harder, but I think is making all the difference. And I think when we look back on this movement, you're really an important trailblazer, an important figure in this movement that will likely last, I hope, for a generation or more. So I know you're going to stick around for a couple more questions, but I just want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulate you on behalf of everybody in the independent movement. We're rooting for you. We appreciate you. And we can't wait to see all the good stuff you're going to do next, sir.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It truly is an honor.
Thank you, sir. As we stay around here, stay vigilant.